When I pressed play that night, the sound of my husband's laughter filled our living room. Only it wasn't meant for me. The voice came from my phone, from a message I was never supposed to hear. He was laughing softly, the way he used to when we first started dating. And in the background, I heard a woman giggle, intimate, close, familiar. That sound didn't just echo in my ears, it carved through my chest like a dull knife. I remember sitting perfectly still on our cream-colored sofa, the same one we had bought together from a thrift store in Atlanta when we were still broke and madly in love. I had a cup of tea growing cold in my hands, the steam long faded, but I couldn't move. The only thing I could think was, how long has this been going on? Before all of this, before the laughter that wasn't for me, before the texts and the confrontation, my life was painfully ordinary. The kind of ordinary that feels safe until it suddenly isn't. My name is Clara Mitchell, and for 13 years, I thought I knew what love was. Evan and I met when we were both 24. He was the kind of man who could charm a waitress into refilling his coffee twice without ever asking. He had this laugh that could disarm anyone, and when he looked at you, you felt seen, really seen. We married young, bought a small house outside of Savannah, and spent weekends gardening, cooking, and dreaming about the future. I worked as a school counselor. Evan managed a local construction company. We weren't rich, but we had peace, or so I thought. Our evenings were quiet rituals: dinner at 7, dishes by 8, then a glass of wine and old vinyl records until bed. He'd tell me about his crew, the guys on site, the difficult clients, the never-ending delays. And I'd listen, proud that he trusted me enough to share the stress. But in hindsight, I realized he wasn't confiding in me. He was covering tracks. It started small, the way these things always do. A late-night text, a client call that stretched into midnight, the sudden habit of flipping his phone face down on the table. I told myself not to overthink. I told myself love meant trust. And for a while, I did trust him. I trusted the man who kissed my forehead before work, who brought me daisies every Friday, who still called me honey like we were newlyweds. Until one night, about 6 months ago, he came home smelling faintly of jasmine. Jasmine wasn't my perfume. It clung to his shirt like a whisper, soft and floral and unmistakable. I asked where he'd been, and he said, "Client dinner, you know how those go." He said it lightly, almost too casually, and something about the way his hand gripped the doorknob told me not to ask further. But curiosity is a strange thing. It doesn't fade when ignored, it festers. Over the next few weeks, I began to notice inconsistencies. Receipts from restaurants I'd never heard of, sudden business trips that didn't show up on his calendar, and once when he left his laptop open, an email notification popped up from someone named J. Just a single letter, J. The subject line read, "Last night was unforgettable." He slammed the laptop shut so fast I didn't even have time to blink. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing that line, "Last night was unforgettable." Was I crazy? Paranoid? Had my marriage really come down to a single email? The next morning, he kissed me goodbye and said, "Don't wait up. Long day ahead." And as I stood in the doorway watching him drive off, I realized something inside of me had shifted. It wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was the quiet beginning of resolute. In the weeks that followed, I became someone I didn't recognize. I learned how to access deleted messages, how to mirror his phone using cloud backup. I never imagined I'd go down that road, but desperation has a way of making you resourceful. At first, I found nothing, a few friendly exchanges, work updates, nothing incriminating. It almost made me feel guilty for doubting him. Then one evening, as I scrolled through his chat history, I found her, Julia. Her name popped up in a thread that had been archived, tucked away like a dirty secret. Their messages were affectionate but coded. Lunch meeting meant hotel. Project updates meant stolen hours. And then came the audio file, the one I accidentally played that night, hearing his laughter with hers. I remembered my hands trembling, the phone nearly slipping from my grasp. My tea spilled over the table, dripping down onto the rug. I didn't even move to clean it up. That was the night I knew, and something in me broke quietly, without sound. For the next few days, I moved through the house like a ghost. I smiled when he spoke. I laughed when expected. I cooked dinner and packed his lunches. But inside, I was studying him, memorizing every lie, every excuse. It was a strange kind of power, knowing something he didn't know that I knew. And then I began to collect proof. Screenshots, recordings, bank statements, even the reservation confirmation from a hotel downtown. It wasn't revenge yet. It was survival. But one morning, while stirring my coffee, an idea came to me so clearly, it scared me. We were hosting his parents' 40th anniversary celebration in 2 weeks. Family, friends, colleagues, everyone who ever looked up to him. Evan had volunteered to set up a slideshow for his parents, full of family pictures and memories. He'd asked me to help him with the setup. I said yes, and that's when my plan began to form. Slow, deliberate, like a storm gathering over calm water. The next 2 weeks felt like walking across a frozen lake. Every step deliberate, every smile rehearsed. I couldn't let him see the cracks forming beneath me. Evan was in high spirits, humming around the house, calling caterers, sending invites for his parents' anniversary party. He was proud of this event, wanted everything perfect. I remember him saying that word often. Perfect dinner, perfect playlist, perfect slideshow. Funny how the word perfect can sound so hollow when you already know the truth. He spent most evenings in his study, working on that slideshow. I'd pass by the door sometimes and hear faint laughter, maybe a video, maybe a call. When I peeked in, he'd minimize the window, smile, and say, "Just editing some clips, babe." "Need any help?" I'd ask, voice steady. He'd shake his head. "Nah, you'll see it at the party. I want to surprise everyone." Surprise everyone. I almost laughed at the irony. The night before the party, I sat in our bedroom surrounded by the evidence I'd gathered. The screenshots, the call logs, the voice notes, all neatly organized in the hidden folder on my laptop. Each file was a tiny knife I had to turn carefully, deciding how deep I wanted it to cut. I could have confronted him privately. I could have screamed, cried, thrown things. But somehow, none of that felt right. Evan had built his reputation on being the perfect husband, the dependable man everyone adored. My humiliation had been private. His exposure, I decided, would not be. Still, a part of me hesitated. Was this justice or vengeance? I thought about his parents, kind people who treated me like a daughter. About our friends who saw us as a couple to admire. About my own dignity. And then I remembered the jasmine perfume on his shirt, the laughter in that recording, the sound of her voice saying, "I love you more when she's not around." My hesitation vanished. The day of the party was radiant, one of those crisp autumn afternoons where the sun paints everything gold. We'd rented a local hall near the river, decorated with white roses and fairy lights. Guests arrived in pastel dresses and linen suits, the air filled with the scent of roasted chicken and champagne. Evan's parents looked genuinely happy. His mother wore a pearl necklace, the same one she'd worn on her wedding day. His father kept calling Evan, "my boy," with such pride it made my chest ache. I smiled, greeted guests, took photos, poured drinks. My movements felt automatic, like a well-rehearsed play. Evan stood at the center of it all, confident, glowing, unaware. He wore his navy suit, his hair perfectly combed, the faintest hint of cologne on his wrist. He raised his glass to my parents, 40 years of love, loyalty, and laughter. Laughter. The guests cheered, glasses clinked, cameras flashed, and all I could think was how easily that word, loyalty, rolled off his tongue. When it was time for the slideshow, Evan called for everyone's attention. "Okay, folks," he said, clapping his hands. "This one's for Mom and Dad. A trip down memory lane." The lights dimmed. A screen lowered behind the stage. The first few slides appeared. Wedding photos, childhood moments, old Polaroids. Everyone oohed and awed, chuckling at the nostalgia. I stood quietly by the projector, pretending to make sure the transition settings were smooth. Evan didn't notice when I slipped a small flash drive into the laptop. It looked just like his. Same brand, same color. He'd never noticed the swap. When the family montage ended, I walked over to the computer and clicked one final file, labeled Final Tribute. The first image was still sweet. Evan's parents kissing in a garden. Laughter rippled through the room. Then came another photo. Evan holding me, smiling. A perfect couple. Applause. And then, without warning, the next image appeared. It was a screenshot. Evan's text to Julia. "You drive me crazy, Jay. I wish I was coming home to you instead of her." The room fell silent. Another slide. "She suspects nothing. Dinner's on the table, but I can't even look at her anymore." Gasps. A murmur spread through the crowd. Someone whispered, "Is this part of the slideshow?" Evan froze. I could see his reflection in the screen, his mouth slightly open, eyes wide, hands twitching. He darted toward the laptop. "Clara, what the hell is this?" But before he could reach it, another slide appeared. A photo of him and Julia, arms around each other, taken in a hotel lobby. His face pressed against her neck, her jasmine perfume visible even through the pixels. The room erupted. His mother covered her mouth. His father's expression collapsed into disbelief. I stepped forward, voice calm, steady. "It's not a technical glitch," I said softly. "It's the truth." For a moment, no one moved. The air was thick with humiliation, his and mine that I'd carried for months. Evan turned to me, eyes desperate. "Clara, please, not here." But I didn't let him finish. "I loved you," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I defended you. I believed in you. And you repaid me with this." He reached for my hand, but I stepped back. The lights flickered. As the final slide appeared, a message from me, plain white text on black background. To Evan. Loyalty isn't something you perform in public. It's something you honor in private. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I've ever heard. Evan's father stood up, trembling. "Son, tell me this isn't true." He couldn't answer. He just stared at the floor, shoulders sinking, pride dissolving into shame. Someone turned off the projector. People began whispering, gathering their coats, avoiding my eyes. And I stood there, hand shaking, heart strangely calm. Justice wasn't supposed to feel this quiet. The next morning, the world outside my window was painfully ordinary. Birds still chirped, the sun still rose, and yet everything inside me had changed. Evan didn't come home that night. I half expected him to. Maybe to yell, maybe to apologize, maybe to beg. But there was only silence. Heavy, hollow, and strangely peaceful. His clothes still hung in the closet, his toothbrush still beside mine, his jacket draped on the chair where he'd always left it. I stood in the doorway of our bedroom for a long time, staring at the life we'd built, or rather, the illusion of one. I didn't cry. I'd already done enough of that in the months leading up to the truth. What I felt now wasn't pain anymore. It was release. By afternoon, the gossip had already spread through town. Mutual friends called, some out of concern, others out of curiosity disguised as sympathy. "Clara, I just saw the video online. Are you okay? I can't believe he'd do that to you. You were so brave to stand up for yourself." Brave. The word didn't feel right. I hadn't done it to be brave. I'd done it to stop disappearing. Because when you love someone who lies to you every day, you start to vanish, piece by piece, until all that's left is the echo of the person you used to be. That evening, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Evan, disheveled, eyes red, the confident mask he wore for years completely gone. "Can we talk?" he asked quietly. For a long moment, I said nothing. Then I stepped aside. He walked in slowly, looking around the living room like it was unfamiliar. I didn't sleep. I don't even know where to start. I crossed my arms. "Start with the truth. You owe me that much." He nodded, swallowed hard. "I didn't feel seen anymore. You were always busy, always distant." That hit me, not because it was true, but because it was how he justified everything. "So you found someone else to make you feel important, while I was here holding our world together." He ran a hand through his hair, voice trembling. "I messed up, Clara. I lost everything. My parents won't talk to me. My job's on edge because the video's everywhere. And now you want me to fix it?" I asked. He looked up, eyes pleading. "I want a chance to make it right." I studied him. The man I once thought I'd grow old with. The man who taught me both love and betrayal in the same lifetime. Finally, I shook my head. "Evan, I spent years giving you chances you never earned. This time, I'm giving myself one." Tears filled his eyes. "You really hate me now, don't you?" I sighed. "No, hate would mean I still care enough to feel that deeply." He stood there, broken and small, waiting for something. Maybe forgiveness. But forgiveness isn't a gift you hand to the unrepentant. It's something you grow into when you finally choose yourself. "I hope," I whispered, "you learn what loyalty really means one day for someone else's sake, not mine." Then I opened the door and let him go. He didn't argue. He didn't look back. He just walked into the evening light, swallowed by the quiet. For weeks after, I rebuilt. I sold the house, too many ghosts in the walls, moved into a small apartment downtown, started painting again, something I hadn't done since college. Each brushstroke felt like breathing after being underwater too long. One afternoon, as I was unpacking boxes, I found a photo of us, taken years ago, on the pier in Charleston. We looked happy. I almost didn't recognize that version of me, the one who still believed love could protect her from pain. I smiled sadly, then slipped the photo into an envelope and mailed it to him with a single note. Thank you for the lesson. I hope you find what you're looking for, without destroying it this time. Months passed. Seasons shifted. I learned to enjoy silence again, not the suffocating kind that hides secrets, but the peaceful kind that makes room for healing. Some nights, I'd sit by my window, a cup of tea in hand, watching the city lights flicker like distant memories. I'd think about everything that happened, not with bitterness, but with understanding. Sometimes life doesn't break you to punish you, it breaks you to rebuild you. One evening, I attended an art show downtown. My paintings hung on a small wall, abstract pieces full of color and quiet emotion. A woman approached me, smiling gently. "These are beautiful. There's so much strength in them, and a kind of peace." I smiled. "Thank you. They're from a time when I didn't think I'd find either." She nodded knowingly. "You must have loved deeply once." I looked at the canvas, bold reds, soft blues, gold streaks bleeding through like light after a storm. "Yes," I said. And I learned that sometimes love isn't what saves you. It's what teaches you how to save yourself. They say revenge can poison the soul, but sometimes it's not about vengeance at all. It's about truth. And truth has a strange way of setting you free. I don't regret exposing him. I regret staying silent for as long as I did. Because silence, I've learned, is just another kind of prison. So if you ever find yourself living a lie, don't wait for the perfect moment to break free. The moment you find your courage, that is the perfect moment.